Rabia.
Hey, Ellyn, how you doing?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little out of breath.
Yeah. Well, why are you out of breath?
I just had to grab something from a different room in my house, and my house is huge, you know.
But I thought you worked out.
Oh, I do. I don't do a lot of cardio. I can lift you over my head, though, as people witnessed recently. You couldn't lift me. You couldn't lift me.
I'll
never forget that.
I had a very precarious dress on, Rabia. You did not set me up for success.
Blame the dress. Okay. That's true, though.
This is actually so funny because the guest we have today, we actually saw this past weekend in Dallas. However, she has been on our list to record since 1902. How many times have we rescheduled this recording? Like, Janet Varney, first of all, is here, and she's gorgeous. She looks like a Disney character, but I have entered and deleted you so many times from my phone. I feel like we're in a weird relationship.
Janet's hard to get a hold of, man. She's like, I'm not available, folks. I'm just not.
Hold on. There were
Is that how it went
things
down?
happening on all sides.
I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming you. It was a mutual cluster.
Yeah, you were trying to. I do remember that first telegram I got back in 1902 when I had just found out that you could communicate with people who weren't right next to you. And
we sent you pigeons too.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful
Janet,
times.
it is 9 a.m. where you are, and you look like you're actually dressed. I am never dressed at 9 a.m. like I'm in my PJs. I'm kind of in my PJs. No? Are you not dressed?
Here's the thing. As we all know, I mostly saw both of you beautiful women from a distance, except for I
think I touched you once.
Rabia,
I think I put
and 30
hand,
seconds. Yeah, 30 separate seconds with Rabia, 30 seconds. And you both looked fucking gorgeous. And I was like, oh, this is what I should be wearing. Like, I should be wearing fabulous, beautiful clothes. Instead of
Ellyn likes to dress. She's on she's on the red carpet when we go to McDonald's. Look, you just can't.
Oh my God! So that's why I was like, I need to get up early enough to put something on. I got to put something colorful on. I mean, it is a 1970s weird collared polyester shirt that I got in Brussels. Did you hear that? Oh, thrift shops in Brussels. That's a successful. I don't know. Wait, Ellyn, say something because I don't think we can. Are you muted? Ellyn, say something.
Oh, Ellyn, this is a weekly
Wait,
thing.
Am I muted?
You were
Not
the
anymore.
whole time. Were you being funny?
No.
Yeah, we just didn't hear
Have
you.
I spoken this whole time?
No.
I mean, I'm trying to think of the last thing you said.
Honestly,
can't remember.
in one ear, out the other.
She said clusterfuck. She said it's been a clusterfuck trying to schedule.
Yes.
Nothing beyond that.
It's so weird. I haven't touched anything. There is somebody, there's a gremlin.
Ghost.
Gilbert the gremlin.
There's a frogger.
No.
Frogger. Is that what they're called?
Janet, do you know what frogging is?
No.
Oh, just remain innocent.
What's frogging?
Don't tell her.
Joey and I are covering a show on I Think Not called Frogging. And it is when people live in your home and you don't know they're there. Yeah,
that's not a thing.
So that's our new fascination. But
do you have an attic, Janet?
I know,
do you have an attic?
Obviously,
because
that
if you have
could
an attic,
absolutely happen. That could happen in Rabia's house. We all know it's 80 stories.
Yes.
She barely gets into some of those guest rooms. The servants' quarters. She's
Yeah.
not. I know she's not servants, so they're just empty, sitting there. I'm
The
sure
pool
she's got
house.
froggers. I'm sure it's packed full of frogs. I don't have. I would know. My house is small. I would know if someone was living in my house, wouldn't I? Or would I?
That's what everyone says, Janet.
they could be in the walls, Janet. They could be literally in the walls.
Yeah. But let us introduce you all to Janet Varney. I have so many things that I want to talk about, but Rabia, let's give our listeners a brief bio on Janet, because literally, I know she's done everything.
Okay. Emmy-nominated actor, comedian, writer, producer, award-winning voice of Cora, a Nickelodeon's Legend of Cora. I'm just trying to figure out what to pull. I mean, it's just, let's see, spent 7 years hosting TBS's Dinner and a Movie. She's recurred on HBO's Entourage, been in How I Met Your Mother, American Housewife, Shameless, Key and Peele. Oh my Lord. I mean, it just... podcasting. You're on Bob Ruff's Truth and Justice podcast. And you also you co-wrote and created Neil Patrick Harris's Puppet Dreams series, which is amazing. I don't know. There's just so much. You do improv, sketch comedy. It's what do you not do? I think that would have been an easier bio to deal with.
Yeah.
Let me suggest this. If I had been on a hit show as a series regular and it had been like, then my bio would just be like, she was on Friends. Because then you don't have to ever do anything ever again. You just wait for the checks to roll in. But it's a gig economy. And I feel like both of you understand what it feels like to be like, well, I like this thing, but I also like this thing. And maybe that thing over there is fun. And like,
my
you
brain
just sort
does
of
work
keep
like
saying
that,
yes to stuff. But then you're like, oh, it would be different if, if I was just like working 16 hours a day on like a hit show and then I had all the money and then no time. But that's not been the case for me.
But this to me is so much more
of different things.
So much more fun and interesting and fulfilling as a life and career. I mean, I'm drawn to people because that's exactly how I am, where there is no certain my lane. I'm in every lane I want to be. I'll just do whatever I feel like. It's good at the moment. It's fun at the moment. Yeah.
Exactly.
Love it.
I love that. I want to take a minute to talk about Korra. So, Legend of Korra. The reason I want to talk about it is that whole world. So you got a taste of the true crime world this weekend. That animation, anime, sci-fi world, that is the Roman Empire. It is so bananas. And I want to know what it's like working in that world. But I love voice actors. Like Christopher was the narrator for one of the shows we covered. And I'm so fascinated by how important voice acting is and just how important to the story it is. So can you just talk a little bit about that? Because Korra is your voice, right?
Yeah, that was a situation in which, you sort of, that was one of my first voiceover jobs. And I knew that I had started getting voiceover auditions because of being in comedy and like coming from sketch and stuff like that. And so that was definitely one where like I thought, like what fun, wacky cartoon jobs am I going to be up for? Like what silly voices can I come up with? And I went in to audition for that and they were like, no. No, just really mostly your voice, like maybe a little less manic, maybe a little like tighter of a range. So you're not like, oh my God, you guys. Like that is, because she's not a crazy freak like I am. But for the most part, entirely my voice. And it's a voice actors. I agree with you, Ellyn. And voice actors in particular, not to say a mean word about like actors, but there is something, it's like this very known thing in the voice acting community where voice actors are just so chill, they're so humble, they're just not like, the competitiveness is sort of somehow not present the way it is with like on-screen or stage actors, where the industry has like pitted you against each other. Like they're enforcing the idea of like, if you don't get this job, someone else will, and they're taking your job. And for some reason, that just doesn't seem to exist with voiceover. Like, I can't tell you how many times like I'll be in a room and people will be like, oh my God, I'm so glad you got that. Like I read for that one and I had you in my mind when I was like, it's just very generous of spirit. And so it's a delightful group of people to be around. And you see that play out at Comic-Cons too, like in those sort of worlds. Like but also, there are people who get a great job doing a voiceover for a video game, but it's like a buxom gun-toting character. and then you're interacting with like potentially a different type of fan. Like the fan who wants to meet that Lara Croft may not be the same.
Are you saying there's never any like sabotaging in the voiceover industry? Like I'm gonna like lick this person's coffee with some strep throat something. I mean like you're just trying to like sabotage.
So.
Are there any rivalries? I mean, you
in voiceover. Honestly, I don't think so. Like
really, because everybody's so unique and everybody kind of has their niche. Is that why, or is it just everybody's so well established, or?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know why. Because there are people who work and are in everything. Like I have friends who get all the jobs. Like and that I should resent that, but for some reason it just doesn't feel personal at all. And it's just very easy to be like, well, you're a genius. And that, again, I'm not trying to like separate the on-screen and off-screen acting community like that.
What do you prefer?
Specifically or severely, but I love doing both. If you're asking me what I prefer doing, I love doing both because this feeling of community on a set or on stage, Ellyn, you know what I'm talking about. Like the family of doing a show together is, it's just a different experience than being in a voiceover booth. And if you're lucky, you're recording with your cast and then you have like two people in the booth on the other side who are funny and nice, but it's not the same as like, guys, we made a show. We're doing a thing. We're making a show. Like none of us could be here if we didn't have each other. Like I like the sort of spirit of that, I think, more. But it's also people joke that you can go and record a voiceover in your pajamas, and that's also true, and that's really appealing.
That's why we love podcasting.
That part is really fun. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. It scratches those images.
And you're in the podcasting world, which is probably exactly the same. There's no animosity or bad blood here either. It's perfect.
We're one big happy family.
I gotta go.
It's great. It's great. Rabia Lumi deodorant is back, created by an OBGYN to take care of all the odors that isn't just in your underarms, because turns out there's other stinky places.
There are? I never knew that. You mean all those folds in our body?
Mm-hmm.
They can get a little ripe too.
Yes, the whole body deodorant is the first of its kind. It is safe to use anywhere on your body. You got your pits, you got your underboobs, you got your thigh folds, you got your belly buttons, your butt crack, your vulva, your feet, wherever you feel like you need a little support in the smelly department, because an OBGYN saw firsthand how normal body odor was being misdiagnosed and treated.
Yeah, people are like, I've got deodorant on my pits. Why do I still, why am I attracting flies? But the thing about Lumi is that it's formulated with mandelic acid to stop odor before it starts. So it's kind of like a pre-odorant.
Exactly. And pH balanced, aluminum free, baking soda free, paraben free, and their starter pack is really awesome. I travel with a lot of the pieces in their starter pack. It's perfect for a new customer. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, the cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice. I like the mini body wash, and the deodorant wipes are a must for your purse or backpack or gym bag.
People know this about me in the podcast space, that I just like to smell really good. And I read some research from Lumi that says 12 hours after a shower, the average person has an odor level of 6 out of 10. Holy moly. But with Lumi, the average odor level is 0 out of 10. So I am Lumied to the max.
As a special offer for our listeners, new customers get $5 off a Lumi starter pack with code SOLVETHECASE at lumideodorant.com.
That equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you visit lumideodorant.com and use the code SOLVETHECASE. That's Lumi, L-U-M-E, deodorant.com, and use the code SOLVETHECASE.
But tell us a little bit about your podcasting, and then we'll jump into 3 quick things.
Sure. It's funny. I feel like I've already gotten my 3 quick things just by virtue of
Yeah, I know.
I've already talked about myself too much.
No, we have 85 more questions, so it's fine.
Shenandoah Park.
Mostly. What? Yeah.
Well, so I've been podcasting for many years. I started a podcast in 2010, I think, called the JV Club. Rabia, you've been on it. Ellyn, Don't Think You're Gonna Escape My Grasp, where I talk to people about their awkward teenage years. And that has been such a joy. And I started that because when I moved to LA from San Francisco, where I was never going to move to LA and be in the business, I was like, that's all, it's all the wrong, you have to have value on all the wrong things, blah, blah, blah. And so when I came down here and I felt that sense of competition and just feeling that just imposed on me, I was like, this is so uncomfortable. And I was like, I feel like I'm in high school. I've not felt this close to being in high school since I was in high school. Who are the popular kids? Who are the pretty girls? Who are the funny girls? Right. And so I was like, I'm so uncomfortable with this. And so I just, and then at the time in podcasting, it really was very male dominated. And so I was like, I don't know, I guess maybe it would be fun to talk to women about their teenage years and sort of show that women can be friends with each other and lift each other up and be, and so that's kind of how it started. And then eventually I started having male guests like in the summers only. So they get a little summer fling
break.
and then they get kicked out. So yeah, I've been doing that for a really long time. And then, sort of it's grown out from there. But
Wait, how
like
did you,
everyone in podcasting, I stalked Rabia, just like everyone else in podcasting. I stalked Rabia. I was a massive Undisclosed fan.
Oh, I love you, Janet. I think I was on the JV Club before you started working with Bob, but I don't know the story behind that. How did that happen? How did that come about?
So my podcasts that I listened to, like religiously, were Undisclosed and Truth and Justice. And because I just got real excited about wrongful conviction and exonerations and seeing people do that work and seeing people be passionate about it and so at some point I was listening to Truth and Justice. I was shooting this show in Georgia, and I was listening to Truth and Justice on the freeway, and I heard and at the end of an episode of Truth and Justice, Bob was like, so people keep asking me like, Bob, what do you like? What do you listen to? What are you into? And I always feel bad because I never have good recommendations for people in true crime because I don't really listen to that. I listen to comedy stuff. Like my favorite podcast is this podcast called Never Not Funny with Jimmy Pardo. And I literally had to pull off the freeway because I was like, holy shit. If he listens to Jimmy Pardo, that means he knows who I am because I am on that podcast all the time. Like, maybe I should write him an email and see if he'll do my podcast. So that's how that happened. I wrote him and said, hey, I'm a fan of what you're doing. I would love to have you on my podcast and hear about your awkward teenage years and ultimately hear about how you got married to the same woman twice. Not a good idea either time, I guess. But anyway, so that happened. And then that caused me to feel
I don't even know that
courage
story.
that caused me to have the courage to reach out then to Colin, because somehow I found out that Colin Miller liked a show that I had done. And so that's when I really started to weasel my way into
That's amazing.
Love a weasel. That is I love a good backdoor. That came out wrong.
I also love a good backdoor. I love a good backdoor.
That.
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
I want to be around for the
Varney
workshopping of that.
Backdoored her way into podcasting news at 11. I actually
You pegged it. Anyway, so then Bob asked me like when
I'm starting in my law license now.
That's it. You can hear your law license going away. But then so Bob asked me to help out and do follow-up episodes with him because his editor, who was also his co-host, was leaving, and that was like a year and a half ago. And I think I was like, sure. I mean, hopefully I'll have time to still do it, and then somehow it's been now a year and a half or something, and I just show up and try to represent the listener, especially women listeners.
But it's amazing to have you in the true crime space. It is very exciting for us nerds out here.
It's so cool, and it is so funny that we just saw you this weekend, albeit for a second, but we have been trying to get you on for forever. So since you are a comedian and you are so adorable and so funny, my 3 quick things, because it's my show and I can do whatever I want because my name is on the title, I'm doing 5 rapid fire questions for you today.
Ellyn, this was not cleared with me, whose name is also in the title, but nobody asked me. All right.
Janet. Is soup something you eat or drink?
Eat.
Is pizza round or square?
Round.
Okay. Would you rather have feet for hands or hands for feet?
Hands for feet.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to explain that later. Which do you prefer, talking or texting?
That's a great question. I guess texting. It's rapid fire. I have to answer from the gut.
Yeah.
But that's not really true. I'm a podcaster. You know what I mean? Like, we all love talking. You clearly prefer talking.
She said texting.
Oh, I
Ellyn.
couldn't hear. It bleeped out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I said texting, but then I regretted it.
Have you ever made a prank phone call?
Yes.
Naughty. Okay. Go, Rabia.
We are almost the same person, Janet, except for that last thing. I really need to make a prank phone call once in my life. I just feel so left out.
My prank phone call is
No.
I've made one and it was really.
Well, let's hear about it. I want to hear about it.
It's so on brand. It's super embarrassing. It's not even a prank call.
And
so when I was in high school, my friend and I were big fans of Gary Shandling had like that, his Larry Sanders Show and stuff. And I found out he was from Tucson, which is where I'm from. And like, then I found out that, and this does date me, but his mom was in the phone book. And so we three-way called Gary Shandling's mom.
Oh my God.
But like, I think we were just hoping that he really was there. Because all we said, we were like, she answered the phone. We were like, hi, is Gary there? And she was like, oh, he's not in town at the moment. And she was like, can I take a message for him though? And we were like, and then we hung up. So that was the prank call. Yeah. It wasn't really.
Ellen's like, that doesn't count.
Very thought out. It wasn't like, is your refrigerator running or anything like that.
My friend, when I was in 4th grade, my friends and I prank called like it was like we were getting paid per call. Oh yeah. We prank called so many times.
I am shocked by this information, Ellyn. Yeah, I never would have imagined. I actually have one question, Janet, which is how we normally play this game, but Ellyn is not bound by rules.
I've taken it off the rails today. I'm sorry.
That pizza question. I mean, listen, those were hard-hitting questions.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy to hear about the hands for feet. That makes total sense. Anyway, listen. So here's my question. Yeah. In the evenings, when work is done, the bra comes off, the animals are fed.
The bra is off most of the day, Rabia. The bra is off most of the day, just to clarify.
Whatever else is left comes off.
Yeah.
What is your comfort watch at night by yourself? What does Janet Varney watch all by herself just because she loves it?
That's a great question. I mean, I'll
it could be a genre. It could be a specific show you love. It could be,
I'm trying to think of what I return to. I mean, I am not an anime aficionado, which is always hard because then I get asked to do these anime conventions and there are all these people wearing these extraordinary costumes from these very little known anime because you could just, that's an endless universe. And they're always like, do you know what I'm dressed as? And I'm like, oh, are you, if you're not a British, an elderly British detective, then no, I don't know. I don't know what your character is. I feel like I definitely gravitate to like British 1 hours or like, I mean, I genuinely love like these, this is just a story about 4 old people who find love again after all of their spouses die. Like it's
really romantic.
But they're all British. I don't watch like American comedy because there's nothing about that takes me out of it.
Are you
Acorn
is
Acorn would be BritBox, Acorn, just stuff like that. I'll get into because it's not the things that people relax doing. I'm always like, oh, I know that person. Oh, I auditioned for that.
I love British shows. I don't know what it is. I'm like, why do I love my colonizers so much? I don't know, but I do.
No, it's not great.
Colonizers here.
When you put it that way, it's not great.
No, it's not. I mean, but it is what it is. It's very fresh in my memory. Anyway, third question.
Let's go to the third question. Go ahead and give it to her.
Yeah, what's your connection or relationship to true crime? Something you always loved, something, where'd it come from?
I definitely was not, I don't watch like ID kind of stuff. I just didn't know really that was a thing. So I knew, I would watch like HBO stuff. Because that's the channel that I had and knew existed. But that is for the most part. And then for sure, like everyone else. I mean, I was already a huge podcast listener and I listened to This American Life. And so I was one of the people who was like the teaser for Serial when I heard it on This American Life was like, this is my jam. Can't wait. Want to listen to it just like everyone else. But it certainly was not my first podcast.
So Serial was that was your gateway drug into true crime, really?
It was my gateway drug into paying as much attention to true crime as I do now, which is still fairly limited to like serious true crime podcasts. Again, not because I don't like comedy, but because that I just live in the comedy world. So I don't usually combine them. And that was one of the things that was so interesting about like understanding Obsessed Fest differently or understanding like My Favorite Murder was like, oh my God, you can't, right. I could have combined 2 things that I'm really interested in, but it never occurred to me. Like it never occurred to me. I was like, no.
It's a confusing genre.
True crime is over here. This is But at the same time, like that is, but then every conversation you're having offline is like having a dark sense of humor and laughing and saying inappropriate things about stuff because everyone in your world already knows that you cry at the drop of a hat and that you feel this deep empathy. But like I was like, oh no, I could never like I'm humorless. I'm humorless about that. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, like seeing all of you like amazingly funny, talented people be able to kind of traverse, like trade back and forth in that, I was like, oh, everyone understands that. Like, it's not a thing that happens behind closed doors. Like, true crime fans understand that you have a dark sense of humor because you can't live in that space without being able to laugh too, you know? So it took me a really long time to sort of realize that crossover
same.
Comfortably and healthily exists.
I was indignant when I heard that true crime comedy podcasts were a thing. I'm like, that doesn't even belong in the same sentence. And here I am with Ellyn Marsh.
That makes me feel better.
All right. And she has been regretting it ever since. Okay.
Doubt it.
Shall we jump into our crash course about this case
that
the Disney princess lookalike Janet Varney has chosen? Why don't you tell our audience the case that you chose, and we will give them a little rundown of it.
Sure. Yeah. So this is these are the Shenandoah Park murders. I believe they took place in the late 90s. It's true that I didn't pull anything up.
No. We have a whole thing for you.
Okay, so you're going to give the breakdown. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to give
because I listened to your show and I was like, luckily I don't have to give the synopsis. And then
you just got to show up.
Like,
you just got to show up. Yeah.
I got to know all these facts. Lollie and Julie were girlfriends. They were together in this national park in Virginia, and they were horribly murdered. And it's just one of those fascinating cases where, like a lot of cases that we find ourselves coming back to, or that we are fascinated by and kind of can't let go of, there's this real intersection between, sort of social justice and issues in minority communities that tend to inform like bad investigations or why choices are made that are and then just the nagging, like upsetting, like who the fuck did this. It's a really fascinating case. And the book that you held up, Rabia, Trailed, I have listened to that audiobook I think at least 2 times. I may have listened to it 3 times because I have to like hear stuff over and over to remember any of it. And it's really compelling, and it really, I think for a lot of people who know about this case, the 2 women involved feel like girls I went to college with. Like, I went to a small college before I went to SF State. I went to Northern Arizona University. It's full of like crunchy hippies who still love the Grateful Dead, and it's that community has crossover with like very LGBT friendly kind of stuff. And the way that Catherine like very empathetically describes the girls and spends so much time of the book really talking about their lives and their choices and their backgrounds. I really feel like I know these girls. Like I should say women, because they were in their mid to late 20s. One was older than the other, but when they were killed, but I when they're described, I see them in my head as girls that I, went and smoked pot with at the Grand Canyon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
it is a fantastic book. I got to say, it is highly readable. And Catherine Miles is an incredible investigative journalist, Trailed. And it just so happens we have the same publisher. So I actually got a copy from her editor, which is wonderful. Nice. It's an incredible book. And I did use it as a resource for today's episode. So let's get into it. Let's let folks know what this case is all about.
Great.
All right, here's our crash course. My absolutely favorite genre of film, even more so than mysteries, is the being hunted in the wilderness by a wild animal. I just can't get enough of them. The Grey, The Bear, The Ghost in the Darkness, Anaconda, and of course the entire Jaws franchise. These are just some of my favorites. All of these stories share similar elements. Unsuspecting travelers, a focused and tenacious predator, and of course, an unrelenting and often vast wilderness or expanse where the prey can find no quarter and there's no one around to save them. The thought of a bear or coyote or even really a pack of geese hunting me down is enough to keep me away from the great outdoors, but none of these predators are nearly as terrifying as being hunted by the most dangerous animal on Earth, man.
It's no coincidence, then, that national and state parks, with their thousands of acres of thick forests and creeks and trails, are the perfect place for predators of the humankind to find their victims. The case we're discussing is just such a story. It's horrific and tragic, and you can't help but wonder if these murders could have been prevented. 23-year-old Julie Williams and 25-year-old Laura Lollie Winans, met and fell in love in the spring of 1995 through the well-renowned outdoor program for women called Woods Women Incorporated. Woods Women was the first organization of its kind, a non-for-profit that existed for 2 decades, which trained women in leadership and outdoor skills through dozens of programs. They were nothing short of pioneers and gave opportunities to female criminal offenders and queer youth, along with women of all stripes, to explore and understand the great outdoors. The program gave Julie and Laura, who were both survivors of sexual assault, a sense of control, autonomy, and power over something that many women often fear, being in the great outdoors alone. Julie was from St. Cloud, Minnesota, and a geologist by training. She was dedicated to social work. She had volunteered in underserved communities in South America and gave her time to be a translator for non-native English-speaking victims of domestic violence. She had a big heart and a quiet nature, opposite to that of her partner. Lollie, as Laura would commonly be known, was from Unity, Maine, and had a big, confident personality and was close to graduating with a degree in outdoor leadership. A little over a year after they met, they came together again in May of 1996 in Shenandoah National Park in Virginia for a 9-day camping trip. By this time, both women were experienced backcountry leaders and had each led outdoor expeditions across the nation in some of the most harrowing and untamed wilderness in the nation. This time, however, it was going to be a relatively easy trip. Just 5 days backpacking on the Appalachian Trail in Shenandoah National Park, a much easier excursion than many they had taken in the past.
They set out on May 19, 1996, accompanied by Lollie's golden retriever, Taj, with a plan to wrap up on May 28th. When the weather is nice, the park is packed with visitors along the famous Skyline Drive. Believe me, I've experienced it. But once you get off that one main road, the 196,000 acres of the park is remote. The two women were taking it fairly easy, hiking about 5 miles a day. We know this because both of them were prolific at journaling, and Lollie was an amateur photographer, so much of their journey was well documented. On or about May 25th, they discovered the Meadows Bridle Trail, a little-known trail that wasn't even marked on most maps. Back in the day, it had been used to take folks on horseback riding excursions, but by 1996, it was long overgrown and mostly forgotten. The two women went down the steep trail roughly a quarter mile and then bushwhacked a couple of 100 yards off the trail to set up a camp right next to a creek. They set up their tent and stacked their stuffed backpacks one on top of each other in an orderly fashion. They were so far back into the woods that no one standing on the trail would have been able to see them. But clearly, someone not only saw them, but was likely stalking them.
May 28th, the day they were supposed to return, came and went without any sign of Julie and Lollie. Julie's roommate, who had expected her to move out of their shared apartment by the end of the month, wasn't happy that he hadn't heard from her at all and that the end of the month had arrived. Irritated, he called her father to report that Julie was nowhere to be found, and in turn her father alerted the park authorities. By the morning of May 31st, 1996, the search for the women was on. Their car was found immediately, exactly where they had indicated it would be parked when they filled out their permits, and the next day, a retired couple found a golden retriever with no collar wandering around the path in the park. It seemed to them that the dog was dazed, but searching as if maybe it was looking for a person. When the park rangers arrived, one of them called to the dog with the name of the dog that had belonged to the missing women, and immediately the dog responded. They knew for sure they had found Lollie's dog, and also realized it was unlikely the women were alive if the dog was out wandering alone. Not long after sunset, around 8:40 p.m., the two rangers went down to the bridle trail, and this time they spotted a tent. As they approached, they could see the campsite was in disarray. The tent had been cut open in the rear, 3 pairs of boots were strewn about, and an array of litter covered the ground, including a roll of toilet paper soaked in blood. The women's 2 backpacks, however, were still stacked, one on top of the other.
As the rangers began poking around, one of them noticed a smell in the air. It smelled like death to him. A dead animal, maybe. When they peeked inside the tent, they saw a blue sleeping bag zipped up to the top, and it appeared that someone was in it. A look inside confirmed their worst fears. It was a woman, face down, bloody, and clearly lifeless. It was Lollie Winans. About 60 feet away, close to the creek, they found Julie. Likewise, inside a sleeping bag that had been zipped all the way to the top with just the crown of her hair showing, and likewise lifeless. The 2 women had been bound, gagged, and murdered, the killer having slit their throats. Shockingly, amazingly, the park authorities did not immediately realize that a killer had even been involved. In fact, one of the rangers who had found the bodies initially reported that he assumed the women had been killed in a bear attack. You heard right. The ranger, finding 2 bodies stuffed in neatly zipped up sleeping bags, thought a bear was the culprit. The bear theory quickly evolved into a murder-suicide theory, even though state investigators and the FBI were on the scene within hours. How could they even reconcile that theory with the fact that both women were gagged with their own long johns and had their hands bound behind their bodies with duct tape? And yet that was the narrative initially floated. Which is made weirder by the fact that just weeks earlier, the same investigators that had helped with the search for Julie and Lollie had been called to the scene of another crime. The partially buried body of 25-year-old Alicia Showalter Reynolds had been found by a logger. She had vanished 2 months earlier, and it had been clear to investigators that whoever had killed her had done so with meticulous planning. The same seemed true of the murders of Julie and Lollie. The perpetrator didn't happen upon the women randomly. He had likely been following them, watching them, and had descended upon them with a murder kit in hand. He had brought duct tape, a knife, gloves, and perhaps a gun. He had taken his time and left without a trace. This was undoubtedly not his first kill. And Alicia, by the way, was one of 6 women who had been murdered in the region in the previous 6 months, 3 of them having also been left in sleeping bags. There was a killer on the loose, but the authorities were loath to admit it.
The authorities finally admitted they had a double murder on their hands and maybe even a serial killer after an LGBTQ paper called The Washington Blade kept digging into the story. It wasn't until 6 years later, however, in 2002, that charges were brought against a suspect, a Maryland man by the name of Daryl David Rice, who was already serving time in federal prison for an attempted abduction of a woman in 1997. He was indicted with the murders of Julie Williams and Lollie Winans. The state's theory of the case was that Rice, who had said he hated gays, was a homophobe and killed the women because of their sexual orientation. The case against him was the very first ever federal capital hate crime brought in the nation, and among Rice's team of lawyers was Deirdre Enright, the very same Innocence Project attorney we heard from in Serial. Enright took Rice's case because she believed a very mentally ill man had been roped into charges that had nothing to do with him, and DNA evidence eventually backed her up. 2 years later, in 2004, charges were dropped against Rice when he was excluded as the source of the DNA found at the crime scene. The dismissal of the case was, however, without prejudice, meaning the charges could again be brought against him in the future. Rice was eventually released from prison after serving time for the attempted abduction, and so far those charges have never been brought again, even though the original investigators in the case still believe he's their man. This story is tragic in many ways, one of them being that to this day, the murders of Julie Williams and Lollie Winans remain a cold case, unsolved. Another tragedy is this, that perhaps they would still be alive today if the authorities had alerted the public and everyone entering the park that a serial killer was operating in the area and obviously hunting women. Let's talk about it.
Janet, I'll be honest, I was not familiar with this case. Although I am familiar with like the Route 29 killer and other similar killings that have been connected because authorities believe or people believe that they were like connected to one killer. But I'm wondering, you said you've listened to the case the book 3 times, but why this case? How did it come to your attention? And what about it like really made you want to talk about it today?
Yeah. So, full disclosure, I did do this for Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club.
Toby.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, there you go.
I know you're on that. You're on the list too, Rabia, of like every.
I've been on a couple
every
of the shows.
year. Yeah, he'll send before every like new year of the book club. He'll just send like the people who do the book club reviews a whole list of stuff and that he's going to be doing upcoming. And so I like skimmed through it and I saw, just seeing like the name and the one sentence describing it, I was like, I want that one. I know I want that one. I don't know anything about it, but I want that one. And so that's how I came to know it. And through the book, you do find out about the Colonial Parkway murders, which I had heard of but wasn't super familiar with. It's there's a case of another lesbian couple who was killed in this remote area, not terribly far from where Lollie and Julie were killed, just in terms of regionally and like sort of the same. I mean, it's not like a hiking trail. It was off a highway, but and so it definitely, but you just the way you guys were describing it, I mean, it really does, like we talked about this before, but it really does ping all of those things, like being like it creates that like rage that I think a lot of us feel around true crime, of where that's the victimization of women and the idea of some sort of municipal or like government agency being like, yet we do want visitors to the park. So I guess, I mean, that's Jaws, right, Rabia? Like, that's it. It's literally the Jaws story is like, yes, there's a shark killing people, but it's tourist season and we need to make money. So let's just tell people that's not real. I mean, that really is what it sounds made up.
Yeah.
And then, it sort of has everything. It has a person who certainly committed an offense, certainly was an offender and certainly served time for it. But you hear about, the original investigators being like, no, we got our guy. And then when it's proven through DNA that it wasn't the guy, like, how much work is done to try to find the real person? You know what I mean?
Right. The tunnel vision here is astounding. And we're going to get into what an absolutely awful investigation this was a little bit later. But I thought we would start by talking about Julie and Lollie as in terms of victimology. And the reason I bring that up, victimology, I mean, it's not a real popular subject with a lot of people, but I think people don't understand what it is. But I do know it's something Bob focuses a lot on. So I don't know how well versed you are in it, but I'm assuming if you are around Bob Ruff for long enough, you know, you know all about victimology.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how would you kind of analyze the victimology here?
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm definitely not trained in it at all, but the idea is not so much the idea of it is it's a tool, like everything else. It's a tool. It's not the tool. I totally understand when people are like, behavioral analysis, like that's bullshit. I get it, but to me, it's a tool. It's like, what do you have in the toolbox? You can do that. Don't only do that, but the idea of like, what can we find out about the offender based on where this crime took place, who the people were, what the opportunities were based on the lifestyle of the people, and sort of seeing if you can kind of work backwards from there. And then certainly like crime scene analysis and what you can identify about the behavior of an offender based on how detailed or planned or unplanned or chaotic, opportunistic those types of qualities seem to be. So here you have these two very experienced wilderness trekkers who, in fact, even teach other women how to engage with the trail. Like you said, Ellyn, earlier, that it was an easy hike for them. This was not a huge challenge. It was more about them connecting in their relationship and just being together, which makes me sick to my stomach to even say. Thinking about like just the whole scenario was like it's all violating. All of crime is a violation, but this just seems, it's so repugnant. Anyway, so they're trying to focus on their relationship. And then they have their dog, which is also like what you can, in terms of victimology, like they had a dog with them. Yeah. This person,
you would think
we all hear it time and time again. Like you avoid people with dogs because you don't know how the dogs are going to behave. So that suggests that perhaps.
But a golden retriever.
Come on. Golden retriever.
Yeah, but that's a safety precaution. Even just having a dog. I mean, people that makes you feel safer. Just having somebody that will, a thing that will bark, that will sound an alarm, that gives you a sense of security.
I was going to say it's interesting to me. What's interesting to me about this, the fact that they were a lesbian couple, was that it didn't seem to me that they were targeted for that reason. Although that was the case the state made against Darrell Rice, right? Well, he specifically targeted them for that reason. Given the fact that like in like the 14 months before they had been killed, 8 other women and girls had been killed, like in this kind of central Virginia section, it seemed more likely to me that it was because there were just 2 women without any man around. And I also wonder if they had not been so experienced, like if you put me on a trail, I'm not bushwhacking myself 200 yards into a place that's super remote and nobody can see from the trail, right? If they had been less experienced and actually stayed on a trail that would have, at that season, been very well traversed, might have actually kept them safer. But the fact that they were so experienced, you know how much 200 yards is? That's a lot of bush to cut down to put up a tent. I just imagine, like, that this guy must have been following them.
I agree.
Like, for a while.
I don't think everyone was like, you couldn't even have found their campsite had you not seen them go back into the bush, do the bushwhacking, and like set up the camp. Like it's a hard space to find. This is not opportunistic in the sense of like he was just on a trail, saw a tent, and was like, hey, let me do something horrible to someone. Like he stalked them.
It didn't seem like a crime of opportunity. Although maybe he just wandered the woods with a murder kit looking for the opportunity. I don't know.
I agree with you that like prior to them entering the park, I don't have a sense at all that it was like a person known to them, you know what I mean, who was like stalking them in that scenario. I think I agree with what I think you're saying, which is like it's opportunistic in the sense that they were in an environment in which we know women to have been killed.
He was already looking. He was looking for people.
He was definitely looking. Yeah.
But the part that they were in that this tragedy happened was very remote. So he had to have known, you know, the novice people all hang out here, but some people who are more comfortable with their wilderness skills and surroundings would be somewhere else. So that because the murders were very methodical, very calculated. They said he like cut the duct tape and taped it on the tent and did all of these creepy, methodical, very deliberate things.
He took his time.
That would only come with a sense of calm that you're not going to see or come upon anyone else. So
yes,
I agree. I mean, when I first read this, I was like, well, how do they know that he stalked them? But it actually is quite clear he had to have known that he could take his time, as dark as that sounds, and not get caught, right?
The interesting thing about this trail is, like, Ellyn, you're right. I think this man knew his way around those woods because, again, this trail is not, like, it's not used. It's not on maps. But these women are so experienced that apparently what happened was, the only way this trail is even marked and you even can identify that it exists at that time, I don't know about today, but in 1996 was like there's like this little cement like marker there. And I think maybe they saw it and they thought, okay, this will be a nice, quiet, private place that nobody will come and we'll have our privacy there. But it's a really steep trail. And if you're on the trail and then you can identify where they have bushwhacked back, even from there, you will not be able to see their camp. However, if you go further down the trail, it plateaus. And if you are at that plateau area and you look a little bit up, then you could have seen their campsite. So he might have already been down the trail further on that plateau area because guess what? They found a beer can and some cigarette butts down there. Yeah. Investigators, when they finally started looking.
We have we have a couple of the same kind of question in the chat, and I wanted to pose this to you both. Do we think that them being a lesbian couple was a narrative perpetuated by the prosecution, or do you think he was watching them and maybe saw them kiss, or maybe and that, like, do we think that because two gals about town could go hiking at any time, do we think that was a real thing? Because when I was researching the names of the other victims, nothing those murders in, I think it was 86 in the Colonial Parkway, those ones were a lesbian couple. But do we think
there was one lesbian couple, but the other ones were actually heterosexual couples? Like there were I think 3 other murders where it was a man and a woman, or a man and a young girl, in fact, in one of them.
So do we think this was just a narrative, like the whole hate crime angle? What do we think about that?
I mean, I agree. I mean, they definitely, I don't think this is what anyone's saying, but just to clarify, like they definitely were a couple. So it was it was known that they were a couple, and it was an opportunity. I mean, again, this is one of those things where you think about the level and amount of hate crimes that are happening at all times in the country, and that this was the first one that was actually, you know, brought to the table. And if you read the book, there's a lot of politics. Surprise, surprise. That feels like that's always happening behind the scenes. But it seems like there was a lot of politics around that and that decision. There was a lot of very careless handling of how that information came to the public, like without the families being a part of that conversation. And so, I think it was an opportunity to, I mean, was it an election year? I can't remember, Rabia. Like, it's been a minute since I read the book, but there's some sort of...
5 years old at the time, Janet. I don't know how old you think I am.
No, I'm saying it's the book. In the book.
Remember.
The book.
Yeah.
Whether or not in the book you hear.
Wasn't that Clinton's, wasn't it Clinton administration?
No, Ashcroft was the attorney general at the time. I don't think he was Clinton's AG.
Oh, yeah.
But I'll
By
say
the way,
this.
Ashcroft, not known to be like a super queer friendly, but that's why I say there's politics there. There's something happening there where it's like, this serves us. That's the cynical take, but I think that's kind of what the author is saying is like, this benefits us to use this as a hate crime, regardless of whether that's an accurate narrative. It's convenient for us to be able to show like, hey, sure, we're not prosecuting like people who are, still lynching people, but we're going to go ahead and like handpick, cherry pick this specific thing that's in Virginia. It's near DC. It's like a woke thing to do by an administration that, was really struggling with its cred in terms of like, are you gay friendly? Like, are you though? There's a lot of like, don't ask, don't tell stuff going on.
Right,
so
that's exactly
I think,
the era.
Yeah. So there's a lot of politics there. But there was definitely a sexual component to the crime, but I don't think it has to have anything to do with the fact
100%. And let's talk about that. But I do also want to say that the way I think a lot of these cases work, and Janet, I know you're intimately familiar with this, especially when it comes to wrongful convictions, is investigators are like, that's our guy, now we're going to work backwards as to why he did this. So we have to come up with a narrative, whether it's an honor killing or it's, a homophobic hate crime. Like it was a very convenient fit for them, given the fact that David Rice was like, I hate gay people. I mean, like, that does not help your case here. And but I will say this, regardless of how prosecutors decided to charge him, investigators from the jump were already like, their lens in terms of investigating did damage to the investigation, because one of the theories very quickly was like, oh, it was like Lollie's ex-girlfriend who was disgruntled did it. And also both of the women were found with a lubrication inside their body, and it was a lubricant that it was nowhere on the campsite. So it didn't come from anything that was there. So this was something the perp brought in, took with him. But their theory initially was that it was like a chapstick these ladies used for their own like sexual
Blistex.
Own sexual pleasure or something like that. And then there was a vibe. At least Julie, I think they had determined that Lollie had been sexually assaulted with an object or objects. And I don't know if a determination was made for Julie or not, but both of them did have the lubricants inside them.
And no semen, so it wasn't.
Semen, object rape probably. And a vibrator was found. And I just, this
like
is
left,
placed.
Staged. Yeah.
But there was that weird statement that they said, according to their family or anything, it wasn't their vibrator.
That was weird.
I also was like, why are you saying that? Like,
what family knows that?
Well, I think it was. I feel like, again, I could be misremembering, but I feel like it was also like, it wasn't just a family. It was like just people who know sex toys were like, this is like an out of date. Like, it was like there was something about it that was like, this is just not, there was something suspicious about it that didn't make sense for them with their victimology or their lifestyle or whatever. It was like, I mean, I genuinely think someone was like, guys, there's way better vibrators out there, and those girls would have known it. Like, it was just one of those, which is total speculation for sure.
Yeah.
But something also, around those clues was
the
like,
staging of it
something's, this is not right.
If the perpetrator brought lubricant with him, then he didn't just show up thinking, I might find an object to use this with. I think he probably brought that.
His part of his kit is probably that.
But wait, correct me if I'm wrong. It wasn't actually lubricant. It was like something else, like Vaseline or something that wasn't actually like lube. Am I wrong?
I don't remember. I don't know the source of what it was, but it was a foreign lubricant like item that was the source of which was not anywhere in the camp. So I don't exactly know what it was. Yeah.
The reason I say that is because one seems premeditated and one seems opportunistic to me.
Right.
At least.
Right. I think that what Rabia was saying was like the the primary narrative was like, we couldn't find lubricant, but we did find Blistex. Maybe they used Blistex. And that's what, like, they were trying to fit those two things together in a way that, again, also a bear attack and a murder-suicide. It's crazy.
That enrages me
It's so offensive.
It makes my face hot.
Yes.
I mean, I had to really think that through because I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just going to give this guy the benefit of the doubt, which he does completely undeserved.
Keep all your doubts.
Let me just finish my sentence. Let me finish my sentence. Maybe his theory was like both of these women were actually asleep and attacked while they were asleep, and so it was a bear. And the back of the tent was kind of ripped open. It was hard to tell what it was torn or actually cut with a knife. So maybe the bear came in and blah 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 blah. And but one was 60 yards away from the tent. I'm like, that's the only thing that I can think of that would make. But what person sleeps with a sleeping bag up to here? And if they were not asleep like that, you're suggesting the bear zipped them up to here.
Yeah, I think
not the brightest people.
No. And also, like, there's a whole other exploration in the book about park rangers and this like incredibly offensive practice that is, we mostly understand it through the lens of the Catholic Church because that's something that's been, exposed very much so. But there's the same kind of practice where it's like this park ranger in this one park does something that is a fireable offense and is like a violation of someone's privacy or safety. And instead of being fired, they're just moved to a different park.
Yep.
Like, what?
You're out
We're
in the Grand
doing
Canyon
that
now.
in the park service? What are you talking about? Why? Why are you protecting them?
Well, it might be because they had such a shortage of rangers. Apparently, one of the practices of this local group was that they would recruit from a local prison. So anytime like they were people who were being released, they'd be like, oh, you need a job. And so they would hire people who might have been already violent offenders to come and work in a job where, you know what I mean? Like they could be very dangerous. I mean, like
in the woods.
how many serial killers have turned out to be cops?
Yeah. Do the research. Like we want people who have served their time, who are coming out, who are in a position where, like, if you had 3 strikes because you were in possession of marijuana, like, it might be great for you to be in the outdoors and like be empowered to, and to have that kind of change of your life. But do your fucking homework. Like, there are appropriate jobs and inappropriate jobs for people coming out of serving time. And there were people who had like full on sex offender records who were being put in a uniform. Which, like, how many times in true crime have we all talked about the irony? I was thinking about this, and I wanted to hear what you ladies thought about it, because I have always, even though you think I look like a Disney princess, like I have always mistrusted cops, like in terms of like someone's gonna try to get me in trouble for something, or these are like kind of mean people who, because I was friends with a lot of like punks, and you know what I mean, like I was a goth, like blah blah blah, whatever. I am more apt to trust like a security guard or like a park ranger. Like I'm more apt to trust someone in a authority uniform that isn't an actual police officer than I am a cop. Like my guard is down less when someone's like a park ranger than it would be if it was police. So
I just feel like park rangers to me like seem like the friend. You're working in a park. You must be the friendliest person. Also, Smokey the bear. I mean, like
nature.
He really, that cartoon really
fires.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I see it. I see them like opposite ends of the spectrum. I see it like hippy dippy Joel, who's like, "Let me get you the plants that make you feel funny." Like, he's like, "I haven't bathed in a week, but also here's some peyote."
Yeah.
Or creepy serial killer guy. Like, there's no in between. Like, it's just in my mind. Like, it does take a special kind of person. There is a shortage of park rangers. That's not a sexy job anymore. Sitting
I
and
could
like
be a park
communing
ranger.
with nature.
Maybe that's my next move.
And they like live out there. They live in the wilderness for like months and months, and you really are just like chilling with the pansies, like, and not even in the fun way, But like,
well,
so was any of that like ever explored? Like, and I'm not saying because they might have been formerly incarcerated individuals. It could have been someone that wasn't incarcerated that like was sitting out eating the funny plants,
The short
There's
answer
a good
is
suspect for this, by the way.
Oh yeah, there's a great suspect for this.
Yeah.
But the short answer is no, nothing and nobody was explored except for the man who was actually exonerated of the crime,
Right.
Rice. But I do want to talk a little more about, like, you know, how effed up this investigation was. Okay, like you have the fact that they're like, it's a bear, no, it's a murder-suicide. I don't know. One woman just tied herself up with long johns and gagged herself and bound her. And then it was the ex-girlfriend. I mean, you don't even know if there is an ex-girlfriend. Like, they're just pulling shit out of their rear ends. But one of the things that was the most alarming to me about this was that they resisted letting people know that, listen, there's a killer on the loose, and it's probably somebody. They knew whoever committed this crime did not do this for the first time. There is no way this is a first-time offender. This is somebody who is so confident, like so meticulous, plans it, has done this before. And they knew that when they found 2 weeks earlier Alicia Reynolds' body. They already knew, and it was two of the same investigators were involved, like, in searching for Julie and Lollie. And so here's a crazy story in this book. They find the body like 8:40 p.m. They find the bodies around 8:40 p.m. at night. A few hours later, the FBI shows up, state investigators show up. So there's like joint jurisdiction, which also is a shit show because, you know, they're all kind of waving their wee-wees at each other, who's got the bigger one. And they don't want to work together. They don't want to play together. The next morning, there's a group of hikers that is setting out for a hike, includes men and women. I think it's like 5 of them. And they come across this man, and they're like, well, he was alone, and he said that he was a through hiker, meaning he was like just, he wasn't like going in for a few days. He was like hiking the whole Appalachian Trail. They described him as skinny, rugged looking. They were very excited. They're like, wow, you're like the real deal, that you're like kind of living in, you're like a mountain man. We want to get a picture. They got a picture of him, and the guy says to them, are you headed towards Shenandoah Valley? And they're like, yeah, we're headed that way. He's like, oh, didn't you hear about like the 2 women that were murdered? At this time, that information had not been made public. Okay. So then this group moves on, and they come across a park ranger, and they're like, so we heard these women got murdered. This guy warned us. Are we okay to go down there? And the guy was like, yeah, you're fine. We're not saying anything, and there's crime everywhere. Just be careful. You don't need to change your itinerary. Just head into the wilderness where these women were killed. So they're not warning people that there is a killer in these woods, on top of which they never investigated to look for this guy. They had a picture of him.
It's insane.
Yeah. One of the things Catherine Miles was able to do when she investigated this case, and, you know, she worked closely she got a lot of her source material from Deirdre Enright, because Deirdre was the one representing Daryl Rice, Innocence Project. They had, over the years, gotten tons of documents. I mean, it's been like 25 years since his murder, so she's tons of material. And one of the things they were unable to unearth were these confidential documents that were created by the Park Service, in which they, as part of what they were going to put out to the public, were misrepresenting the crime as a bear attack and the murder-suicide. So they were like, this is our PR plan. We cannot stop visitors from coming in because it is tourist season. We need the money.
That is so irresponsible. And what about the family? Like, how do you mischaracterize something, then put thousands of people at risk?
Yeah.
It is the cover-up of that. It's like it's all compounds, the shitty investigation, and then like the nothing to see here. We all love like a nothing to see here movement. And it's just, I don't understand how they were able to like get away with it. I honestly don't understand how nobody gave pushback. I mean, maybe it was because we hadn't had the world of social media yet, and they weren't able to draw bigger attention to it, you know, people sounding alarms. But like, when you're young, you just think like the right thing will always be done.
In the movies, there are helicopters, you know,
they're stopping every car,
entries
and
have been blockaded. There's, you know, police tape all around the park, like they are on a manhunt. Yeah, that's in the movies. In real life, the day after the bodies were found, the morning after, park rangers and staff sat around till 2 p.m., not even being given directions as to what to go out and do and look for. Yeah. They just sat around waiting for something to happen. By the way, let me ask you guys. Let me ask you guys. Do you camp? Are you hikers and are you outdoors women?
Have camped, I think, once. And I always feel like I would do it, but I got to tell you, I got a real fucked up neck. And so that part of me that's like, would I be able to get up off the ground in the next morning? But I know that there's like, you know, they got all kinds of great sleeping mats and stuff now, or you could just like camp out in your car. Glamping. Yeah, that's not something that I didn't grow up. I'm always curious about this.
Glamping.
And I definitely want to know from both of you, although I have a feeling I already know from both of you, of just having a sense of you or knowing you. But that's like, there's so much stuff in my life that I don't do because I didn't grow up doing it. Like, I've literally never been on a pair of skis because no one took me to ski when I was little. I don't know. People are like, you've never skied? And I'm like, no. Yeah, we didn't have money. 100%. And so camping is just
that
not
shit costs money, man.
something
My parents were
anyone
not.
in
My immigrant
family
parents were not
did.
spending money on skiing.
And so I feel like it's taken me so much of my adult life to be like, you know, this thing that all these things that you say are other people's hobbies, like they could be your hobbies. You just have to make a decision about whether you want to try it or not. And that's one of those things that's just on the list. It's like, oh no, camping's something that like cool friends of mine do. I don't do it. And like that, literally the difference between doing it and not doing it is like, well, why don't you just go do it? But I don't.
Right. I did a humanitarian vacation before Lola was born, and we camped through Africa. Like we were like we went Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and we camped. Like we were camping. Like but the scariest thing when you're camping there is animals. I mean, because I was like, I don't speak the language, but I definitely know what Simba means, and they all just yelled Simba. And I don't think anyone is doing a version of the Lion King anytime soon.
I can't see you running in your stilettos, Ellyn.
No, everything packs up, and it was like talk, 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 Simba, talk, 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 and I was like, you guys, I
Were you up a tree? Were you up a tree?
No, we had to get you had to like get in your tents and everything. But all to say, like we did this humanitarian vacation, and like we volunteered at all these orphanages and everything, and you travel and you camp, and it felt very natural to me. But that's because I had someone like telling me what to do.
Yeah.
Like, this is how we wash our plates when we camp, and this is how we eat our food when we camp, and so I could never like make that happen on my own.
But did you love it, Ellyn? Was it something you're like, I can't wait to go back into the wilderness and do that? Like,
I actually did love it.
You did?
I did love it.
But do you think that's because it was part of the bigger experience of like what you were, the humanitarian work? Yeah.
Maybe. I am actually this actually shocks people, but I do like camping. I'm actually very low maintenance. Think about it, Rabia.
All I know is I have never met
Think
you.
about the
I have
bed
never met you other than you have at least 4 outfit changes or costume changes.
But it's for a specific event.
Right.
My
Rabia,
theory is because I'm the same way. If you put me in the woods, I can't wait to not take a shower for 3 weeks. Like, give me
exactly.
Put me in context. Ellen's an actress. She's going to adapt to her environment. So if you want to put her in a campsite, she's going to fall in love with not having to do any of the stuff that you do when you're going to an event and putting on something fabulous. It's about where you are and adapting to your environment. So
do you actually go hiking and camping like as a thing? Is this something you kind of do? Like, I go to the gym.
No,
but you like it.
Oh, right. Did you see the Janet? The gym.
I'm like, isn't it something you regularly pursue?
No, but if someone were to say, do you want to go camping this weekend? I'd be like, fuck yes, Ellyn, I want to go camping with you.
Ellyn, me, and Janet, we are going camping together, and it is
with
going to
no
be a
expert,
shit show.
no one to tell us what to do. I'm going to be like, I tied our garbage to the trees to keep the bears away, guys. Is that right?
2 things. Rabia, who had the worst bed at the shore?
Yeah, Ellyn.
Because I'm low maintenance, number 1. But also,
because you don't make your bed. Oh, no, not because of that. I'm kidding.
What does that have to do with anything? I don't make my bed.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it's true. Ellyn was like, I will sleep anywhere. I'll sleep on the ground. That is true.
Oh, see, you're my hero. If my one thing has to be like, I have to sleep in a good bed or I'll die, then great. You can have everything else.
I could sleep standing up like a goddamn vampire if you
I
really
generally take 2 showers a day, and but beyond that, here's the thing. See, I always had, like, you have these bucket lists, right? Like, especially in your 30s is when you're like, before I die, I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to take up hiking. I had this moment. It was a very clear moment. I was halfway up a mountain, and because I was like, I got to do this hike because everybody does this hike halfway up this mountain. And I was like, F this crap. I don't enjoy a minute of it. I am crossing it off my bucket list. There is nothing fun. I refused to take one more step up the mountain. I was like, I'm going right back down. Old, especially old white people walking right past me. I'm like, go for it. This brown woman is going to go sit on the beach because I was like, it's not necessary. But I'll say something else. I did not grow up camping. We did not leave Pakistan to then come here, America, and find ourselves in the wilderness. We need to be in safe spaces. But also, the outdoors scares me, and I want, and this is not a plug, but I'm for real. I have a podcast called Nighty Night, which ran for a season. It'll be back, but in our first season, we did one episode, and it was written by the amazing, and we've had her as a guest, Sarah Kalin. The name of the episode is called "The Tiny Hairs." Okay, and it is based on a real story of her going for her law enforcement training when she was like in her early 20s, and then deciding I'm going to camp alone for a couple of days by myself and literally encountering a serial killer there. And if that night, Sarah, all the hair on her body stood up and she ran and she might have been killed. It's a great story. But stuff like that, I'm like, no, I will not go camping. But with you guys and maybe a camera crew, I might.
I love hiking, so I feel like I'm ready to get into the camp. Like, hiking is definitely something I enjoy very much. I'm now in a place in my life where I need to be. I live kind of near Griffith Park. It's a huge park. I would say I go for a walk or hike. It's just a hike to get home to my house, to be honest with you, because I live uphill. But so all of that, yes, is a yes for me. All of it, including like my partner just did like a 4-day. This is not really him either, but he's obnoxiously good at things like that. Like, I just did rock climbing for a day and I did really well. And then the next day his body isn't sore. Anyway, it makes me angry. But he just did like a 4-day hike in, the mountains above Portland and had this, amazing experience. And that I do really like being out of doors, and I do feel like, we had a mountain lion who lived in Griffith Park for 10 years. P22 is his name. And he died recently, and the whole city is in mourning. There's like murals to this mountain lion everywhere. But it's interesting because he was, it's a mountain lion, and he's in the middle of this urban space, but it's a huge park, and there are no like natural predators for him. So he did pretty well. But I would go hiking, and it was very telling that like the way in which I felt unsafe had nothing to do with the mountain lion. I was like, I'm like, I'm worried about a human being. I'm definitely not worried that this mountain lion gives a shit about me. This mountain lion wants to eat, a deer. But feeling like whatever like protection I'm carrying is not for that. It's like for a person who, I don't trust and feel will attack me.
Because it's all so scary. Speaking about scary, should we talk about Richard Evans?
Yeah.
There's your guy. Maybe.
Yeah.
But a good suspect. So, I don't, there's no point in spending a whole lot of time on Daryl Rice. I mean, we can talk about, I will say this. So, in furtherance of the absolute circus that was the investigation, the authorities continued. See, he was already in prison when they brought the charges, when they indicted him for this. They were like, we got to get this guy dead to rights. So they they came up with this fake scheme where they had a fake copycat killer become his friend and try to get him to admit stuff and just tell him how much he hates women and the rage. And Rice was like, you should try yoga. I mean, this guy was like, he just didn't ever take the bait. They spent probably millions trying to like somehow entrap him. Didn't work. And then you have this other suspect that Catherine Miles really, and Deirdre Enright, by the way, of the Innocence Project, really feel like is the strongest suspect. So the same year that Julie and Lollie were murdered, Richard Evans? It might be Evans.
Okay.
But also, fuck him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
You pronounce it however you want.
However the F is. Richard Evans murdered 3 young girls, sisters Katie and Kristen Lisk, who were 12 and 15, and 16-year-old Sophia Silva in Spotsylvania County. I think Spotsylvania is Pennsylvania, I believe. But it was like in the same kind of like that region. He abducted these sisters literally from their porch after school, dumped their bodies in a river. And the other thing is, the kind of important thing here is that the DNA from the crime scene, and it's not insignificant DNA. We're talking about a bunch of hair, okay? We're also talking about like male DNA found on the gag of one of the women. didn't exclude him as a suspect. Okay, this guy eventually killed himself when he was being pursued by police after yet another young woman he had abducted and was going to kill managed to escape. He had her in a a big Rubbermaid container, and she managed to escape from that. He is being pursued by police. He kills himself, but before he kills himself, he calls his sister and says, I have killed so many women. I have lost, I don't even know how many.
Mm-hmm. And he's like, I don't even know how many, but I'll tell you, it's not the 3. Yeah. It's not just the 3.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if it was just 3, he would know how many. I mean, like, it's
right.
He has lost count of how many women he's killed. And DNA that came from hair found in the gloves of the crime scene, because that was one more thing the killer left behind, apparently, and in the duct tape that was used to bind the women, were from the same source, and they matched Richard's hair at all but 2 of like the 650 base pairs on a mitochondrial chain. I don't even I have vague recollections of cell biology, but you know, our DNA looks like anyhow.
Well, it's because the roots were missing. So they were analyzing the hair and without the root. So it was like,
but the analysis was done. It was done 20 years ago. Today, you can actually do that analysis over.
Right.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
They won't.
So, but
no one ever wants to test.
This is my favorite part.
No one ever wants to test anything.
This is my favorite machismo, law enforcement, like really being wrong with your full chest.
Yeah.
They were like, Rice killed him.
Yeah.
They were like, really? Because like we have like DNA for like this guy. And they're like, nope, run that DNA again. And they're like, cool, we'll run it again. No, it's still this guy. He goes, nah, it's that guy Rice because he hates gay people. And they were like, no, it literally the DNA, the forensic evidence, the what he said to his sister, and they're like, yeah, no, I'm hearing you. It's still Rice.
Yeah. And also, we are
nothing forensically leads to Rice. And he was like, yeah, but no, it is. He hates gay people.
This happens all the time. It happens all the time. But also,
yes,
they have refused, despite Deirdre Enright, who still, even though Rice was released from prison, he is back in society, he has not offended again. And, you know, and it's interesting because Catherine Miles in her book raises questions about even what he was incarcerated for. Like, he had a registered as a sex offender. He was sentenced to 11 years, and he didn't actually abduct anybody. He was definitely mentally ill. He apparently, he drove his truck past a woman on a bike, and like she ran off the road, and he screamed, like, show me your tits, basically. And they said this was an attempted abduction, and Miles actually argues that it might not have even been that. But Deirdre is still working. Deirdre Enright is still working to completely, fully, like, you know, not just exonerate him, but help catch the killer. And as of like in 2021, the FBI puts out like flyers saying, "Oh, you know, we were looking for tips to help solve the crime." But what they won't do is respond to Deirdre Enright, who is like, "Can we just get the stuff you have in your forensic evidence locker so we can test it? We have a lab in California willing to do it for free, and you won't give us the evidence."
The strength of the male ego, honestly, that they should bottle that shit and sell it. The fact we see this time and time again in law enforcement that they refuse to say the 3 words, I was wrong, in order to honor the victims, give the family closure. Even just the doubling and tripling down, even when science is behind, I can't. If I bump into someone, I apologize. Like, if someone bumps into me, I apologize.
Oh, yeah. If someone bumps into me, I feel terrible the whole day. I'm so sorry that person ran into me and didn't say anything as I was apologizing after them. Bye. So sorry.
Yeah, I was on my way to Dallas in the Uber, and the Uber took a wrong turn, and I was like, sorry.
Totally.
And
could not relate more deeply.
And you're dealing with people's lives. And you're refusing. It happens all the time. Why am I this worked up? It happens all the time.
What's even more mind-blowing about the situation is we're not talking about, it's not the same guys from 25 years ago in the field office or at the FBI headquarters in the crime lab. Those guys are long gone. It's the institutional like blockade around this case. They're like, this band of brothers is never given in. We don't care if they're dead and gone. just as an institution, we are not going to admit we're wrong. You know, I mean, like, this is what's crazy to me is like how police agencies, law enforcement agencies will just, it doesn't matter if the people who were involved in it, it's not even personal anymore. A whole change of guard has come in. They couldn't care less. They just couldn't care less. Yeah. I really wish there was some kind of public, I really want to explore this. There should be a public cause of action that allows like people who, for the general public interest, to bring some kind of a lawsuit against these federal agencies and say, turn over the evidence. Like, I want to dig into a little more. Maybe I haven't emailed Deirdre in a long time. Back in the day, remember she was actually kind of working on Adnan's case. I might be like, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But I do want to talk to Catherine Miles for sure.
It's that part of it is really interesting too. Just that sort of like lesson and we've heard it on versions of it on Undisclosed as well. But just the sort of, and Bob's experienced it a ton too. Just like the same story over and over about like, oh, we just don't have the evidence. We just don't have it. There was a fire. There was a flood. We lost it. And then, and then there's that whole great part of the book where Deirdre's like, oh, I'll go to your fucking warehouse. Like, let me go ahead and get my like headlight and my fan and my 60 like extension cords so that I can make photocopies of this. But you have to be so tenacious to keep getting that no, we don't, like, not even no, you can't access it, like we don't have it. To stay and then wait and just wait it out and then finally get it is crazy. It's so amazing that
this is not an unsolvable case. This is an eminently solvable case.
Yeah.
And if I was, you know, I mean, I just imagining the parents in this case who are probably still around, I'm sure, how it must feel for them that the FBI would rather keep this a cold case than actually like do a new round of forensic testing on any of this. The cigarette butts, the can of beer that was found at the only place the perp could have probably seen the campsite. Never been tested. We don't even know if they have it. The male DNA on the gag. Who else could it be? It was their long johns. It was the guy who gagged them, you know?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well.
But the funny thing is, if it would have involved, you know, someone famous or someone noteworthy or something, they would have been checking everybody's, you know, ticket to get into that park. And, you know, the fact that they were women, I don't know if their sexuality came into play. I mean, this putting our minds into over 30 years ago or whatever, it just like, it is. I just think
in general, when it's women, it's just like whatever.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And especially with something like that where you have, you know, the federal agency is connected to the federal government is connected to, we made a huge stink about making this the first hate crime against this person. And now it's all, those things are all tied together. So like it's kind of tied to a lot of high profile stuff if we have to admit that wasn't even our guy after all.
It's a mistake of historic proportions, right? It's a mistake that's going to be like, you know, in all the law textbooks about hate crimes legislation, they're going to be like, the very first case prosecuted under this law was this case, and we were wrong. I mean, like, so a mistake of, it'll never live, they can never live down.
Who cares?
Who cares?
Just figure, like, if you have the ability to do it, just do it. Oh, these families.
It's just a whole shame, and it's been 20, I cannot do math, 25, 6, 7 years now. I can't do math.
No.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah. Yeah, is that right?
27. I said 30. No, because I was
I'm literally
thinking,
pulling up a
you're right, it's
calculator.
27.
You can say 30. It's like right around 30. It's right around 30, right? Or is it 26?
Yeah, because
27. I feel brilliant right now.
You were a former you went to medical school for like a year, okay?
4 years pre-med. 4 years pre-med. Okay.
Yeah. Damn. Janet.
Yeah. I'm almost a doctor.
Listen, microphone.
I'm almost a college graduate.
I'm almost a fully functioning human. But microphone in your face. You have to give me an answer. You have sat with this case. You've listened to the book so many times. What do you keep going back to as what happened?
I mean, when I finished reading the book, I really thought that it was Evanix or whatever. It seemed like it made a lot of sense. Then you sort of go back to like how many serial killers are operating in a specific limited space at a specific limited time. the joke sort of being like, if you're in the Pacific Northwest, it could be like 11 because we love making serial killers in the Pacific Northwest, who are like in competition with each other.
Yeah, I think it's true for the Appalachian. All these national parks, they're so scary, man. It's scary. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I think that the takeaway for me, I agree. I mean, I just test it. If it's not this guy, so be it. But
figure it out.
It strongly feels like it could be this other guy who's a complete and utter piece of shit. For me, I think, the takeaway of just feeling like, again, the confluence of all these different things, like women and minority groups feeling safe outdoors, feeling like the outdoors is not a place where you're going to be preyed upon. It's a place that you can enjoy and celebrate and learn to be able to navigate and not feel at risk by other human beings, feeling like that's violated, feeling like, being two women in a relationship is more dangerous than being a hetero or male couple is feelings, all of those things lumping together to feel like that you're not allowed, you're not safe and allowed in this space because it's not for you, and this is what's going to happen to you if you try, is so infuriating to me. So that's a big takeaway for me, is like, I want people to feel like they're in a safe space. Again, I understand if you're worried. It's not safe if you're going to like hike and fall off a cliff, of course. It's not safe if you're going to encounter a dangerous animal predator. But I just want everybody who has an interest in being in the outdoors for that not to be a space where it's like, well, good luck because you're totally vulnerable. The park is not going to protect you. They're not going to protect you if it's happened to someone else. They're not going to tell you about that so that you know not to come that day.
Yeah.
Like all of that stuff. There's stuff that you can't control, but I feel like there's a lot that could have been controlled and that you can control that makes safe spaces for more types of people. And even if you don't care about hiking, just think about how that plays into other spaces where it's just taken for granted that like, oh, this kind of person isn't allowed in this kind of space. Like, look at your life, look at the lives of the people you care about and go, should we be doing something to make this a safer space for these people? Like, I feel like that's a big picture conversation that stretches far beyond like hiking in a national park. You know what I mean?
That's why I'm getting my 10-acre farm. I'm just going to camp back there.
But it's like with anything, it's like people should be safe going to a park. People should be safe going to school. People should be safe taking public transportation. People should be safe. It just, it's
going bowling. Hello. Yeah. What happened last night? You guys are following that story, right?
It's so sad.
What happened?
It's
the shooting in Maine.
Oh God.
Maine.
It's 22 people I think are dead.
I haven't looked at the news. I haven't looked at the news today at all. Or last night.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I go through phases like that where I just play catch up for a day. It's like, oh, I didn't look at my phone for a day. What did I miss? You know? Yeah.
Oh, God.
Janet, first of all, thank you for bringing this case because I think there is a certain amount of interest in covering very well-known cases because we all kind of have a theory. But also just there are cases, I mean, this is a bit older, but there, for one reason or another, cases that aren't as like, for lack of a better word, mainstream. Yeah. It just is really nice to get our eyes and ears, especially a case that seems so eminently solvable. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that to our Rabia and Ellyn Solve the Case world. And
thank you for having
you please, first of all, you're lovely. I'm so glad we got to meet you. And please tell our listeners what you're up to, where they can find you, how they can support you. We have such supportive listeners, and I'm sure they'll all want to connect with you.
Sure. Well, I spend most of my time avoiding social media, but I try to get onto Instagram and post. I'm at the JV Club. That's the name of that podcast where I talk about people's teen years. Rabia's done it. Ellyn will absolutely do it. I've had just, like all the people from the show community almost, like just a lot of stuff that, like a lot of fandoms that you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that, Allison Brie wet her pants while she was competing in a gymnastics competition when she was in school. Really good teenage stories from like a lot of really just people you're like, thank you for sharing that because now I know you're a human being too. So you can check that out. We talked about Bob's podcast. You can Listen to my podcast about Avatar and Korra if you are into that. It's a podcast I do for Nickelodeon. It's really fun just talking to people about making cool stuff in that world. And yeah, and I'm on TikTok. I don't know, I'll put like 3 videos up in a month and feel like should be the president of the United States, and then I won't look at TikTok for 6 months. So good luck with that.
Still better.
Ellyn, you are the queen of like everything you do on TikTok, which by the way, I also don't look at TikTok. I literally only went because someone was like, you have to see Ellyn's TikTok. And I went and I was like,
so funny.
I need her to make my TikToks for me. This is what TikTok is for. She's doing all the things that it's for. Just get a little picture of me, do all the same things, but just put with a popsicle stick, put my face on all of it, and then I'll also be amazing on TikTok.
Well, I go in phases too. I go in like, creator world phases, but also I'm like, you're actually working and I'm just sitting on my couch, like putting on funny filters. So I think you're set, Janet.
Says one of the hardest working women I know.
As far as exactly. As far as I'm concerned, you are working if you are making TikTok content. So that doesn't count. That doesn't count. And Rabia, obviously, everyone wants Rabia to, I don't know, just fix everything all the time. That's got to be a lot of weight that you feel.
Ellyn doesn't. Ellyn has given up.
What would Rabia do? What would Rabia do? I genuinely ask myself that. Genuinely, I genuinely am like, in this situation, what would
I said Ellyn has given up on me learning TikTok. I mean, I think you taught me to do green screen about a year ago. I did it like once, and I'm like, I don't remember. Like that gray cell has long left my head. But thank you so much, Janet.
She'll text me. Yeah, something ridiculous. But anyway, I cannot believe we all actually sat down because the amount of times we have been meaning to do this. You are the loveliest. We are so happy that you got to join us.
We'll see you in the woods.
I'm so honored to be on the show. It's wonderful. And I'm just delighted. I'm so happy.
And stay tuned for our reality show called 3 Little Ladies in the Woods.
Yep. 3 little ladies.
Bindles, just a stick. We're like, this is what I thought camping was, and it'll be like a hobo stick, a little bindle with like a little sack. All I brought is granola. Yeah, it's gonna be great.
I'm coming with an entourage.
Look for it on Netflix.
Bring them.
All right. And thank you all for being here for Rabia and Ellyn Solve the Case. Please connect with Janet and follow everything that she is doing. And also with us, you can find us on socials. You can find us on all platforms at Rabia and Ellyn. You can also email us at rabiaandellyn@gmail.com. You can send us a SpeakPipe message about anything that you heard on this episode, questions you may have. You may want to know how Janet gets her bangs so perfect this early in the morning.
Are they clip-on?
Yourself. That's the key. The key is just cut it yourself.
No
one knows your hair like you do.
www.speakpipe.com/solvethecase. And don't forget to join our Facebook group. That is where we talk about everything true crime, everything that, comes up in the world, good and bad. We have great conversations. We have a wonderful community there. You can find us at Rabia and Ellyn Solve the Case. And if you would like to support us further and get bonus content, you can find us on Patreon, www.patreon.com/Rabia and Ellyn. And if you want to come and record with us and hang out and see all the backstage mishigas, join our Star Witnesses. Until then...
Ellyn, can I just say, every time you do that, like in one breath, it's like magic to me. Do you actually have a script in front of you? I don't remember a single URL connected to our show. I'm like, it's back. Well, it's /solve the case. No, it's Rabia and Ellyn. Nope, it's...
That's why
when I tried to derail you by talking about how I cut my own hair. That's
okay too.
All-time low.
No, I love it. That's why I just do it, Rabia. I just do it, and I used to try and bounce, and I'd be like, tell them what our Instagram is. She's like, it's Solve the Case. No, ma'am. It's Rabia and Ellyn Solve the Case. No, ma'am. So now I just do it. Listen, we all have our skills. I'll give the closeout speech.
I'm writing a script. I want to get this one day. I love you guys. I love you both. Have a great weekend. And thank you again, Janet. And thank you guys, our Star Witnesses. I remembered that.
Yeah, thanks, Star Witnesses.
Bye, guys.
Amazing.
Bye, guys.